everybody, I'm Pamela Atwood, gerontologist, certified dementia practitioner, and certified laughter leader. Welcome back to our Confident Caregiver series. I thought today I would spend some time talking about the things that are most commonly forgotten when we talk about the how-tos in caregiving. These are actual lessons that the caregivers have taught me. And some of these are actually things that I experienced also when I was taking care of my grandmother who had Alzheimer's disease. But I wanted to make sure that we share the lessons learned so that maybe we can cut your learning curve a little bit too. And please, if you have ideas, get them to me as well. I'm going to try to post these on our website, agingcareacademy.org. So if you want them in one easy place, rather than taking notes, just sit back and listen, and you can pull them off the website later. So number one, when anybody you're taking care of has some kind of a memory disorder or even high levels of stress, these are some steps that you might want to take into consideration just to make everyday living less catastrophic, less stressful, less panic-ridden all the time. Number one, keys. Gosh, we all lose our keys. I lose mine on a regular basis. This morning I again had to go back into the house after saying goodbye to the kids who were off for I don't know, whatever vacation they're on this week. And I had to go back in and say, oh, Mommy forgot her keys. And there's always a good reason, right? Last night it was because the cars needed to be moved. So my husband moved the car and put the keys away instead of putting them back in my purse. He put them on the little hook. I didn't think to look there. I just figured they were in my purse because I forgot that he moved the car last night. So it was a legitimate reason. Go ahead, get yourself an extra set of keys. That way you don't have to be panicked if someone can't find them, if they're misplaced, or if they're left in a doctor's office or something. Just have an extra set on hand. And that goes not only for the car keys, but also the house keys. Safe deposit box keys if you can, or make sure that there's a release signed at the bank for who can have access to those in case somebody ends up in the hospital. The car, at some point, like we've said in, I think it was show 7 about driving, the only thing we know about cognitive impairments are that the person will continue to decline to the point where at some point they will no longer be safe to drive. So we need to recognize that that is a fact and that there's a big difference between how to operate a vehicle and how to safely drive. Watch show 7 if you haven't already. Next one is wallet and money. And for some people, they have to have money on them at all times. I was laughing at my husband this morning as he put all of this loose change back in his pocket, which he does every day. And I think it's to balance out the keys on the other side. But he always has to have money in his pockets. And sometimes it's folding money and sometimes it's the clinking kind. Whatever is normal for that individual is going to continue even if they don't need the money on hand anymore. So you want to keep that in mind and just make peace with a couple of small bills. Now, some cognitive impairments are a little bit different. My cousin has a cognitive impairment where her concept of money has changed substantially, and she's very young. She was diagnosed at age 57. So with her, she would get a 20 and say that's not enough money. But if you gave her 13 singles, she would say, whoa, Pam, that's too much. I don't want to carry that much cash. She lost all concept of what money was, which was really bizarre to look at in this very young person. So you have to kind of be flexible and be aware that their concept of money may have changed, and we have to adapt to that. If they lose their wallet or their purse, you want to make sure that you've taken photocopies of all of the important papers. Make a photocopy to keep on hand of the license, of the Medicare card, of the doctor's cards, of the prescription cards and the insurance cards. Or they may not even lose it. They may just be hiding it somewhere. Again, this is to take the panic out of your life and out of your day so that you know you've got time to replace it, because if need be, you can just bring your photocopies in your file folder and bring those to the physician's office and say, well, these are the copies. We've temporarily misplaced the originals. We'll find them and we'll let you know if we need to make any changes. That way you've got the originals nearby and someone can make copies later. The other important papers that you need to get rid of too may include, or not get rid of, that you need to make sure that aren't gotten rid of are things like any divorce decrees, property titles, other kinds of important papers and documents that you just want to make sure are in a safe place in case they decide to go missing. The next thing is really a safety issue, and the next several are actually all safety issues. Number one for safety is guns. This is something that most people don't think about. You want to make sure that all firearms are secured and that the ammunition is stored somewhere else. And in case you think it's not necessary in your family, there are research studies that show that 40% of veterans with mild to moderate dementia have loaded weapons in their home. So these are things that we have to take into account, especially if we've got home care coming in. There are lots of home care agencies that will not come in the house if there's a loaded weapon in the house. And also remember that guns aren't the only weapons. I've had clients who've gone up to their attic. They're watching the news, so they think that we're at war based on the news that they're watching, and therefore they go up to their attic and get their bayonet and go outside and start to defend Main Street from the invasion. These news stories become kind of embedded in their reality, and so they'll go up to the attic or wherever, get a weapon to protect the people because they don't understand the context of the news accounts. So you really want to make sure that you're removing and disabling and locking guns and having proper storage if you can't take them off site, which would be preferred altogether. Old medications. This is important too. A lot of times, I just had a client last week and I said, oh, so what did your doctor give you in the past for depression? And she pulled out a prescription bottle, an older prescription bottle that had someone else's name scribbled out. And I didn't know if that was a prescription bottle that she was just using for storage or if this was actually someone else's prescription. Whether she obtained it illegally or not, I have no idea. Or if it was her boyfriend's, I have no idea. But she was saying that she takes this and it helps with her anxiety. And it probably does, but that's not her prescription. That's a major, major red flag and something that needs to be addressed right away. Get rid of old medications. A lot of pharmacies will do medication buyback, or not buyback, but a medication disposal day. Don't drop them down the toilet and don't flush them. Don't put them back into the water supply. That can be very dangerous. And don't just throw them away because then anybody else can get them as well, and that can make people sick. Also be aware that vitamin supplements and over-the-product herbal preparations usually have expiration dates, so you want to keep an eye on that. Food. People with memory disorders very often will leave food in the refrigerator and honestly aren't able to discern if it's safe to eat or not. Something may be old, maybe moldy, maybe just really past its date when it's fresh, and they may not have the ability to decipher, throw it away, or keep it. Clean out the refrigerator regularly. And also with food, make sure that they're still safe to use the stove. A lot of times people will leave the stove on, they'll burn a pot, they may put things in the oven, or they may have stored papers in the oven and then go to turn it on, or under a burner and turn it on. Also, I did have a client once who put a potato in the microwave for an hour because he was told you cook baked potatoes for an hour. So he put it in the microwave for an hour. You need to just kind of keep these in mind as signals. These are symptoms that someone's no longer safe to prepare their own foods. But be proactive on that and don't just wait for an emergency. And then the last one is really about falls and wandering. As people with cognitive impairments become more frail, they're more likely to have problems with falls. And part of that's because their depth perception changes and their proprioception, the awareness of where their body is in space. They may try to sit on a chair, may miss, sit on the arm, fall on the floor. Or their feet may not work the same way and they're not remembering to pick up their feet clearly to make a clean step in their gait. Falls are catastrophic in older adults, and they're the number one reason of someone over age 65 ending up in the emergency room. So you want to be aware of that. The other one that goes hand in hand with that is unsupervised ambulation right out the door. Wandering is the number one life-threatening behavior associated with Alzheimer's disease. If we don't find folks within the first 24 hours, 40% of them die. And that is a statistic that we can and really need to prevent. So be aware that wandering is a risk factor. If they're still ambulatory, they can still wander. If they've never wandered before, but now they're in a wheelchair, they can still wander. Wandering doesn't have to be purposeful. It doesn't have to be directed. It can be totally aimless. I had a client once who was in a hospital with his daughter, and as she bent down to pick up the keys someone dropped, he got on the elevator and was lost for hours. So it doesn't even have to be an intentional elopement. Be aware that those are risky issues. So those are some of the number 1 through however many there were, 9 or 10. Safety issues, the lessons that we've learned from caregivers. I hope that these little tips make you a more confident caregiver. And in the meantime, I hope that you will check us out on www.agingcareacademy.org. Of course, I work for Hebrew Healthcare. You can check us out on hebrewhealthcare.org as well. And in the meantime, if you need me, you can always email me at Pamela Atwood, LOL@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram. And of course, please subscribe to this channel because new information is coming out several times a week. I won't say every day, but several times a week. And I hope that it's helpful. Oh, I wanted to introduce something new. I almost forgot. I want to start answering your questions. So let me give you a quick little question here. It's from a caregiver who wrote in, taking care of another being, especially one who is difficult, is an exhausting activity. We forget, we're too fatigued, too busy, or too distracted to care for ourselves. How can we make this a priority? Aha! And that, my friends, is going to be the topic of show number 18. So stay tuned. Thank you, and be a confident caregiver. Talk to you soon.